Now I have the pleasure of introducing your moderator for today's first panel, Madrona's very own Tim Porter. Tim is a managing director with Madrona, and for the last 17 years has been investing in some of the best B2B software companies in the Pacific Northwest. He is a thought leader in intelligent applications and recently led Madrona's investments in Runway ML, Number Station, Y Labs, Groundlight, Stacklock, and more. Tim is one of our go-tos on all things AI and ML, and I'm thrilled to welcome him to Launchable to chat with other investors on what they are seeing, what they are excited by, and what they are looking for in new generative app companies. Tim, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Henry. Definitely too kind of an intro, but it's really fun to be here. We're really lucky to have a great group of VCs to chat with today. The overall goal of this panel is to try to give all of you builders out there, and by the way, you absolutely are the ones powering this Gen AI revolution. We're just funding it and trying to help along the way. But to give you builders some insight into how VCs are evaluating Gen AI startups, Gen AI investment opportunities, and maybe give you some inspiration for you as you're building your company, or even as how you're thinking about your investment pitch as you talk to investors. So we're lucky today to have three folks joining. Kanu Gulati, partner at Coastal Ventures, has been investing extensively in MLAI for some time now. I'm going to give a very brief intro, and then I'm going to hand it off to each person so they can say more and give a more proper overview of their background. Yohei Nakajima, who's founder and GP at Untapped Capital, as well as the creator of Baby AGI, who maybe many of you have used in several of its incarnations since then. And last but definitely not least, Rama Sekhar, partner at Norwest Venture Partners, who has also done a large number of both early and later stage deals across data and machine learning and DevOps landscape. The only thing I'll just say is I hand it off, and maybe Kanu, you can lead off with the background, and we'll go round robin, and then we'll dive into kind of what you're looking for investments. But you know, how VCs evaluate companies right now is actually a little bit different and a little bit interesting. This space there's been so much innovation. It's moving so fast. Things are changing so quickly that this has been a common discussion, not just with founders, but even with each other. It's like, hey, how are you trying to decide, you know, early stage, later stage, et cetera. So I'm really interested myself in to hear and to share best practices and thinking on how folks are doing things. So Kanu, why don't you give a better background than I just gave, and then we'll go to Yohei and Rama, and then we'll jump in on the meat of the discussion.
Excellent. Thank you, Tim. Very excited to be here. My name is Kanu Gulati. I'm a partner at Coastal Ventures. Coastal Ventures is a multi-stage fund, but we can do anything from a few $100K to incubate companies all the way to writing a $50 million first check from the main fund, and we have a separate opportunity fund. But our sweet spot is coming in early, so a seed or a Series A stage, which typically translates to a first check between 1 and 10 million. And as companies scale, as curious are getting retired, we like to double down and own more if possible. My background real quick, master's and PhD in EE, focused on hardware acceleration. NVIDIA and Intel were my sponsors. I was a researcher with Intel, employee number 2 at a GPU accelerated database company called Heavy.ai. And at KV, I've been here for over 6 years, and I focus on applications leveraging advancements in AI. I look at ecosystem, so the entire infrastructure, model development, et cetera layer. And I also look at autonomous system and robotics. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Yohei?
Hey, thanks again for having me. I'm the general partner at Untapped Capital. We are a generalist pre-seed venture firm. We typically invest, you know, 250, 350K into pretty early rounds, definitely kind of sub 10. I'm probably most known for my unique approach of building in public with whatever the latest technology is to meet founders and learn about it faster. So in the last 3 years, I've built our entire fund backend on no code, launched an NFT collection to learn about Web3, and have built a lot of AI tools since August. And as mentioned, within the AI space, I'm most known for Baby AGI, which kickstarted the autonomous agent trend. And then more recently, Instagraph, focused on knowledge graphs, actually kind of grew as well. They have 17K and 2.6 thousand stars, respectively. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Yohei. Rama?
Thanks, Tim. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Rama. I'm a partner at Norwest Venture Partners. I'm sitting in our Menlo Park office today. And I've had the pleasure of getting to know Tim through a couple of investments, including Algorithmia, which we were both on the board of, and now NumberStation, which Tim mentioned earlier. We're also co-investors with Madrona in UpLevel, which was a Madrona Venture Labs company. And my role here at Norwest, I'm a partner on our enterprise team, and I'm focusing on AI, cybersecurity, modern data stack, DevOps, all the nerdy, parts of the stack. And originally double E computer science undergrad and worked at Cisco in sales and product management before coming to Norwest about 15 years ago.
Awesome. Great range of backgrounds, and we are all proudly nerds on this call, I think. Rama, since I had you go last, maybe I'll give the mic or let you keep the mic and go first, and just give us a bit of an overview. What is your investment thesis in Gen AI right now, and a little bit on what's your framework for evaluating those companies? And we won't make all of you answer every question, but I think this one, each of you should. So maybe we'll kind of go reverse order back on this one and here, and then from there we can compare and contrast and dive in a little bit.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing the other answers. But the way I'm looking at it, Tim, is there's sort of this AI hamburger, right, that's emerged, and on the bottom, the bottom bun, if you will, is the foundation models. We have not been investing there, and I'm happy to share why. The top bun I'm calling, is the applications, right? Everything from thin wrappers on APIs to really complex co-pilots built around private LLMs like NumberStation. And in the middle, is the hamburger itself, I guess, is where I'm spending most of my time, which is all the enabling technologies, securing models, making trust and safety a reality, and sort of the enterprise ability to deploy these models. Everything from doing serving and deployment to experimentation and all the sort of pipeline building exercises that one would have to do. And the existential question we're asking ourselves, and I'm asking myself, is, will there be sort of a picks and shovels and ML ops category? Is this the year? Is this the time for ML ops? Or will everything just be an API, on OpenAI? We're making the bet on the former, that there will be sort of an ecosystem of companies and special companies built around helping enterprises build and deploy these models safely. So I would say I'm spending most of my time there, as well as a little bit in the application layer of the stack.
Cool.
That is awesome. Yeah, hamburger model. We'll come back to that for sure, including people that might like the bottom of the bun versus the top of the bun. But sorry, go ahead. By the way, as you go, I should have mentioned everyone on this, chat in questions either to me directly or to the group, and then we'll definitely want to weave those in. That's probably the most efficient way to do it, but happy to take questions kind of as we go. Sorry, Yohei, go ahead.
Oh yeah, we invest at pre-seed, so pretty early. We are focused, mostly on the team. Within the bun, probably looking at more application and infra kind of ops, not so much the models. And again, being at pre-seed and with this space, it's just moving so fast that one of the areas that I'm trying to constantly do is look for new trends that really haven't grown much, right? At pre-seed, I think the opportunity, I don't want to invest in competitors to companies who have raised Series B. The Gen AI space is moving fast. There's completely new approaches and ideas that are being experimented by founders. So trying to stay really close to that and then look for kind of, unique approaches with promising kind of approaches.
Yeah, I can go next. So at Khosla Ventures, we like to invest in early, bold, impactful investments, right? So, and I think Gen AI, the advancements in AI is creating just so many opportunities across the entire stack. So we invest in everything, applications and what you call the rest of the other side of the hamburger. Within the applications, we like to think of it, at least have a thesis on, do we think of this solution long-term, like in steady state, will it be a co-pilot? Is it augmenting the human? Or is it an autopilot where it's automating the job itself under still some human supervision? And we think that the way the ROI is calculated or the product needs to be showcased or the product experience needs to be built is slightly different for those of two applications. We try to have a thesis on what is the best way for a solution in this category. And on the infrastructure and tooling side, like everything from models, we were one of the earliest investors in OpenAI, but we don't stop with just LLMs. We're also thinking of what's next, what's beyond LLMs. where else could there be a 10x, 100x advantage in efficiency that might come in, for example. And then we're also looking at, everything from hardware acceleration, because, these models are expensive. Can you make them more power efficient, an investment in that space, all the way to even, like how do you make, like use these models for just the creating better AI applications. So the tooling can also be built using AI. So honestly, like the answer is across the stack. And I already mentioned in terms of stage, it's more between the, seed and Series A is a sweet spot. In terms of how we evaluate, definitely one of the core things is the team composition. We like to have a mix of team that understands both the domain, or at least the buyer behavior. And we prefer that, the domain expert should not be the jaded person, but is very open to new possibilities, because OpenAI is creating LLMs in general are creating just such fabulous new experiences. And then on the technical side, we prefer to have somebody which has an applied LLM talent. So not everybody needs Andrej Karpathy to come up with a new LLM, a new transformer model, for example, but they should have enough intuition on where these models fail, what kind of guardrails needs to be built. And really also very equally important right now is understanding how the experiments, etc., can be cost effective, because if you can run into a cost runway, because these experiments of training large models or even fine-tuning large models can become very expensive very quickly. So having that's some combination of the team, if not solved on day one, but at least in the first couple of years, becomes very important. And the other thing, the high level, we think about a difference between a shallow versus a deep integration. A shallow, I would mean, is like more of a thinner wrapper. Again, I'm not saying that this can't work, but the product experience and the momentum absolutely has to be fabulous if it's more of a shallow layer or a thin wrapper around, say, an existing model like GPT. Or on the other hand, the deeper model or the deeper integration is very deeply tied with workflows, collecting data, building a flywheel, very carefully thinking about the product experience and how, with time, the product quality just keeps getting better and better, and really rethinking the risks around Gen AI, which are different than more regular AI or regular software SaaS-based applications.
That's great. One question that comes up a lot, and each of you said things that get at this question, but I'm going to ask it more explicitly, is how do you build a moat? How do you build something defensible, in this space when things are moving this quickly? Great teams certainly find ways to keep iterating. Maybe double click on that. Yohei, maybe I'll start with you. If you're trying to find trends, which is really interesting, that other people haven't invested yet, that's great, first mover advantage. But today's trend is 3 weeks from now is potentially commodity, to be overly dramatic about it. Maybe each of you could comment on this one too. How do you think about defensible companies over time and their moats? I think you're on mute.
Thank you. For me, I like teams. Again, being at pre-seed, they're still trying to figure out what the tool they're trying to build is. So I like teams who can just build and iterate really fast on the product. I think, assuming you go into kind of more complex Gen AI apps, I think there's a technical risk, right? It's not like a SaaS app. You might actually not be able to produce good results unless you are technically strong. So yeah, I like, I lean in on teams that can build and iterate quickly.
Awesome. Rama, how about you?
It's a great question. I think we're still figuring this out. Like, where are the moats? I would say, following my analogy, like the top bun, we have made investments, by the way, in applications that I know, like thin wrapper is sort of a derogatory term these days, but and thin wrappers on APIs, that are building sales copilots, that make emails easier to write, things like that. And there, it's not really about technology or deep IP. It is about workflow, right? It is about product experience, like Kanu mentioned, UI and UX. So, I think there's a lot of we're bringing back the analogies of SaaS versus infrastructure as a service in our partnership. Meaning, when SaaS first came around, a lot of folks argued that there was no technology here, right? We're just, look at Salesforce and Workday, the original incarnations of those things was a bunch of forms, a wrapper, if you will, on a database, right? Now, you contrast that to some of the deep tech and deep IP type investments we made, and both those categories were successful. And I think the same thing's happening here. So like if you look at Number Station, our co-investment that I have to plug to, I mean, there's deep IP there, right? There's Stanford PhDs that are building their private LLMs with a lot of experience. So that's a moat for them, but it comes in different flavors, I guess. So those are two examples, I guess, of what we've seen.
That's great. Kanu, you mentioned sort of shallow versus deep integration, which I loved. So there's clearly can be some moat with the data flywheel. Is that the main way you sort of look at it, or is that, or there that one piece of the puzzle?
It's definitely an important piece of the puzzle. The other things I'd say is, you have to start with like, what is the product experience you are building, and then for that product experience, what are the core components that need to be solved at the start. Like we want to understand what is if there is any access to proprietary data, or if there is superlinear ways of collecting this data while before even the product is launched, or when product is in like used in production, etc. So really the product flywheel becomes very, very important. There are also other questions of how deeply the team has thought about, like, should they be, there are multiple ways you can work with LLMs today. Is you can do the prompt engineering, you can fine tune your own models, or you can build your own models. And which of these three actually are valuable for a particular application? Do they have the right team to build on one of those? And what is the advantage they might have if GPT-4, GPT-5, etc., like that trend continues, where we can't even imagine how powerful and all-encompassing GPT-6 could be. So in light of all that, like, how has the team thought about the risk retirement framework? That becomes very important. Yeah, those will be the top few things.
Yeah, I'm actually taking notes here. This is great. Great thoughts. So
side note, and relevantly, this is more of a recent thought, but I think we're constantly updating our thoughts. So I'll share some of my recent thoughts. I found myself attracted toward more regulated industries. I feel like there's just a little bit more of a less of a risk of like general models trying to tackle that as a business. Not necessarily straight moat, but less competition, I guess, in regulatory spaces is a area I've started looking into more.
That's an interesting thought. I think one of the debates out there is, will just large generalizable models solve, most of the more interesting tasks out there? Will it be specialized models? And that's a debate we have internally. And I think for us, if the solution requires reasoning and they are natural language related tasks, we're almost always seeing that GPT-4 has just way better results because of the reasoning capability and the amount of data it's trained on, etc. If there is a numerical, tabular data, etc., then maybe a specialized models could have an advantage, but the jury is still out. So again, even for regulated industries, if the eventual quality of the solution is important, or like good enough is not good enough, then I think there's a very high chance a large generalized language model may still become the
I agree. I was more thinking just like, OpenAI wouldn't want to take the regulatory risk of giving health advice or legal advice, but they're happy to do other stuff because there's just less risk in offering that service or saying they can do it. So that was more on the business risk side is what I was thinking.
Tim, I would say something maybe controversial on the moat side. Everyone's like, data is the new moat. Data is the moat, right? And there's not one startup that I've met that has like a corpus of data that is setting them apart. Maybe the customers that they're selling to will differentiate themselves, right? Building on those products, but it's not helpful to at least the way I'm looking at evaluating companies. And I'd love to be maybe Kanu, when you guys dug into OpenAI, the data that they were using, obviously, to train those foundation models was differentiated, but at least in the hamburger and the top bun, I haven't seen it matter.
I disagree. I think it matters, right? Because if you are improving, and I'm just not just saying like the core capability on like the cold start with a new company, like if you have been focused on a particular vertical, you understand the vocabulary better, you understand what kind of questions, whether as a co-pilot or an autopilot, or what kind of ways the model can hallucinate, get biased, get source site results which don't exist. All of that can be improved because you have the right data to, say, fine-tune your models. So companies that are fine-tuning, or even using a RAG, which is prompt engineering technique to solve prompt engineering, will benefit from collecting that data because the overall performance gets better. One of the other open challenges in all of Gen AI is just evaluating these models, right? That's a very, it's still a very subjective way. Like, how do you evaluate these models? You can evaluate the, like how good the prompt itself is, or you can evaluate the output of, for example, if the evaluation function is just, if the chat engagement continues, that might be easy. It's 0 or 1, like, was that a good enough answer or not? But say, auto drafting emails, like an example you gave, there the evaluation is much harder. It's not a 0-1 answer. So companies will get better with collecting data on, where were the responses they were getting, right? So there's even the evaluation, they can start building modes. So I think data has a lot of advantages in building the overall experience.
And I would agree that on one part of that, which is data is obviously important. My comment was specifically about evaluating Series A companies that are all saying to us, hey, we're going to get a flywheel going. And once we have data, it'll be proprietary and it'll be specialized in healthcare or legal or whatever. But they don't have it today. So it's this conversation that, I guess, a bet on the future.
Interesting. Yeah, well, one of the things that popped to mind as I was listening is I do think there is a benefit to definitely getting that early user feedback. And because with Gen AI tools, you can build in a feedback mechanism where it just gets better the more it gets used. So to some extent, if you can get that first mover advantage and build in a strong feedback loop that'll help make your product better, that could in itself be a moat where you'll constantly have a better product because you started earlier. I think it's a possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I know my role here is to sow dissent and debate, not to agree with everybody. But, we've made some investments where we thought there was a proprietary data asset at the beginning. There was one where, a company spun out that they had this massive hundreds of millions of database of commercials, that including conversion, including what people responded to, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, hey, that would be a great way to be able to do a Gen AI on this type of content. There've been other ones where, all right, we're going to get this flywheel going, and that's going to be part of their. And then an interesting question is like, well, what's enough traction, right? So maybe an interesting thing there, if the bet is sort of, all right, they're going to get that flywheel of user engagement going. How much user engagement do you need to see, before you believe that? Yohei, you're betting really early, so probably less. Maybe in other cases it's more. Do you have any framework for thinking about that? What is enough traction, and when does that the key question you have to ask?
There's definitely not, like, for us, I can't have like a cutoff on traction. So what I try to do more is just like look at the behavior of it, like just dig in, like, do they have churn, retention, how are people using it, what data are they tracking, what data has changed over time, and kind of really focus on, I guess, the founder again on how they're thinking about improving the product. Yeah, less so than a specific traction number, at least for us.
There's never a bright line, and more is always better, but you still have to ask yourself, what are we looking for? And is it repeatability? Is it certain signals? I don't know, Rama or Kanu, if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I can talk about Lavender, which is a company we invested in, and I would say that they're an application for SDRs to write more intelligent emails. There are a lot of them now, right, in terms of other companies that do the same thing. But what we saw inside our own portfolio companies that were using Lavender, which is how we found out about it, that it started with 2 reps, went to 8, and went to 80 in one case in like a matter of 3 weeks. And when we saw that, it's almost like a cohort that expanded dramatically, but in itself was one deal for them. But it gave us confidence to say, that's almost better than having 10 customers with 8 users, was having one customer that we knew really well, in this case, go from 2 to 8 to 80 in like weeks.
Love that. That led me to something I wanted to ask. All this philosophy is great, but we often ask founders, it's like, okay, I think I get it, but give me a customer example. And so that's a case study of an actual investment you made, and why. Maybe Yohei or Kanu, what is one of the Gen AI companies that you've invested in that you're excited about, and maybe paint a picture on what got you excited about it, why you decided to invest. And then Ram, I'll give you another bite at the apple. You got the ball rolling, but we'll start with Yohei and Kanu.
I mean, it's a hard. I can't pick a favorite one, but I do have one that's a good story. So I'm going to go with
Good.
Wakelo.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's your favorite. It doesn't have to be your favorite. You love all your children, right?
Wakelo.ai, Wokelo. They do AI generated business research on industries, companies, where they can do data room synthesis, basically turning a whole bunch of docs into like a structured memo. That one was really cool because it's a tool that I had already been building for ourselves, and we were actually pretty well known for having this really cool AI analyst memo. And they were referred to us because they were like, hey, there's a company building something that's similar to what you're building. And then when I jumped on a call with them, I was just blown away by how far along they were. And then when they showed me the back end, it was just like significantly, just really, really well thought out. And the fact that I'd spent time building it just gave me like quick insight into like how much thought they'd put into the way they developed the product. So that one was actually a pretty easy investment for us. And also because we were known for our tool, it was pretty easy for us to basically, turn around to all the people who's been asking for our tool and help, convert them into their customers.
What was the name of it, Yohei? I gotta go call them.
Wokelo, WOKELO.ai.
So as we
Cool.
say each one, will you each drop, when someone else is talking, drop the website into the chat so people can see and go check it out?
I'll drop it.
Yeah. Kanu.
Yeah. I'd say too, just to give a different example of a application, like the Copilot versus the Autopilot. On the Copilot side, the one I'd like to highlight is Replit. The Replit is basically trying to say that every, even a non-expert developer can start developing. So the system, the AI will just make everybody be better at programming. So the next billion developers can get trained or perform results or perform the developer tasks on Replit. We got excited just by their sheer traction number, right? Like by the time we invested, they were over 20 million, and now they're like, they still continue to scale. And we think that growth itself can be fairly phenomenal to, towards like the what we internally call as the next dev cloud, like could exist, like developer focused solutions. As that was one, and Amjad, like the CEO, is just like, he's immensely talented.
I'm a huge fan. I build everything on Replit.
Okay, that's great. So that was one, we heard the pitch, and, it was expensive. You don't usually do expensive deals, but like with Replit, it was just hard to say no. So that's definitely one story. The other one on the Autopilot side, I'd like to highlight is a company called MoonHub, which is automating the recruiter using AI. And the idea is like the hiring manager can directly work with this, very nicely easy interface to, every task of what a recruiter does, from, highlighting what the rec is, looking at candidates, interviewing, scheduling, all of those different aspects can just be automated, and the hiring manager can handle it end to end. And the combination of the team, where they had people who previously built recruiting agencies, with folks from, Stanford PhDs working with some of the best in class professors here who understand, again, the challenges of LLMs, not just like all, and only the hype, but understand the challenges also very, very well. That was important. So yeah, we led MoonHub last round.
Rama, do you want to highlight one?
Yeah, I mentioned Lavender. We made an investment in an Israeli company that's still kind of coming out of stealth called Lumix. And what's interesting about this company is that they, as we were following all the sort of creative outputs that some of these models on sort of the image and video side were able to generate, we were thinking about B2B applications around this. And the team at Lumix is directing this to physical security, right? So think of that market where Verkada disrupted, physical security cameras, but thinking about a world where you don't have to replace your camera, or we can interoperate with whatever cameras you're using, and we can do a lot of interesting stuff that we weren't able to easily do before, like everything from measuring lines in a retail store to detecting, workplace danger or accidents and things like that. So I'll drop it into the chat, but that's an interesting one, where a little more boring in terms of like the domain, but really an interesting business and a massive market.
Those are great examples. Thank you. I'm going to take a couple questions from the chat. Things are moving fast, and it feels like the right abstractions haven't been decided for this middle layer. Maybe this is the hamburger, Rama, of enabling tech. How do you decide whether those companies are building the right interface or product? I think an extension to that on some of the enablers is, how do you decide what's going to be a company versus a feature that might get subsumed by one of the platform providers in the space?
I could start. It's a very hard question. Like it's something we constantly debate with. There's always like, hey, we are investors in OpenAI, but I'm not on the board, and it's always hard to say, like, is OpenAI going to, build this next thing. They built the OpenAI Foundry, the embeddings, recently the enterprise version, right? So even within the tooling, right, like they understand, like one of the advantages OpenAI has is they've been the first movers, right? So they have advantage, not just like the entire Microsoft 360 thing, but also on the developer side, they do have a lot of mind share. They understand where developers might be struggling or, like getting blocked, and they can just release those, either agent technologies or the infrastructure around it to, orchestrate agents or the, a better RAG-based enablement, etc. So it is hard, that there is no right answer. What we do try is, have an honest discussion with the founders about, how they think, even though their initial wedge might be A, why does this A the best entry wedge in a particular persona that they're trying to solve the problems for? And in the future state, like 3 years, 5 years from now, like how, what they think it could be built. And the other thing we are trying to have a judgment or conviction around is how quickly do we think this team can, adjust if the underlying model changes or the underlying infrastructure, the ecosystem continues to change. How easily can they adjust? But there is no, for us, we haven't found a clear 0 or 1 answer here. It's an ongoing dialogue. It's a good question.
I want to go back to was there some okay? I want to go back to something, Yohei, you said earlier about, which I thought was really interesting, about regulated industries, and sort of, that's kind of an industry vertical, app layer, most likely type thing. And, Madrona, I think, like you, has been thinking like, well, we're actually think most of the interesting companies just in aggregate are going to be at that top of the bun, Rama. There's going to be some great enablers, some really big companies, and we're investing there too. But if you just, it's like the cloud analogy, right? The hyperscalers took a lot of but not all of it. If you think of all the apps built on top of the cloud, it's way bigger than the hyperscalers put together. So I think there's some analogy there. One thing that we think about is like, all right, so there's going to be all these vertical apps, you name it, travel, insurance, regulated industries, financial, etc. How do you all think about those? Like, do you like really verticalized, focused companies? How do you come up to speed, with, hey, this in this regulated industry, how do I decide this is a good thing? Is it really just trying to proxy with the founders? Tell me a little bit on how you think about kind of vertical apps on top of Gen AI.
Yeah, I can go first, Tim. I think we are excited about it. I would say that there's 2 modes that we're operating in. One is established industries where it's like, if you were to rebuild X with Gen AI, X SaaS company that is with Gen AI, what would it look like today, right? And that we're applying that to CRM, to HR software, to FP&A, software, areas where we were successful before, but we were like, that was 10 years ago. If you were to rebuild that app today, what would it look like? And then I think the other one is, believe it or not, there are areas that are still not cloud enabled. One of my favorite examples in our portfolio is a company called Enable that you probably never heard of, but they are in this multi-billion-dollar market around rebate management, right? Where like, remember you used to cut out the coupons and like send them back when you buy stuff. Turns out big wholesalers do that at large scale, right? And that was a completely on-premise business, in terms of the vendors in the space until Enable came around. So if you look hard enough, there are actually some really interesting areas that are still, believe it or not, on the first journey of cloud. So that's like more like meat and potatoes stuff. And then there are, I think, more maybe more exciting or more sexy ideas on how would you rethink, Salesforce today with Gen AI. Those are the 2 modes we're kind of operating in.
The rebate thing reminds me of I was thinking about, I feel like there used to be services that would like digitize your physical mail, and those were cool. But I was thinking like with LLMs, you can just turn those into like actions and to-do lists and like notifications as you walk into a store. So I think there are just so many ideas to revisit with like an LLM layer on top. That was just one example, but.
Great.
Yeah, it seems like every
sorry,
industry,
Kanu, please.
Yeah,
thanks.
I was just saying, to us, it feels like almost every line of business, every function in the enterprise, or even across different verticals, etc. Like everything is up for, everybody has to rethink their strategy. I haven't seen this before. Like one company, OpenAI launched the how exciting ChatGPT is or results of GPT-3, and everybody has to now rethink what their LLM strategy is, all the way to I don't know, cloud providers in China. So that's been very, very interesting. So it seems like everybody has to rethink where can they, where might they miss the boat if they're not rethinking of an LLM first solution. So yeah, there's just a lot of excitement, a lot of opportunity, and we're seeing a lot of very interesting startups here.
That's a great point, and it builds on a question that Ethan just asked in chat. Is clearly, to your point, Kanu, every business is rethinking, and if they're not, they should be, how they should be using Gen AI in their company and their products, et cetera. When you see new opportunities, do you have a preference for companies that, I know we talk about are native, would not have existed if there wasn't Gen AI, versus companies who are now assisted with Gen AI and they're adding it into their business? That latter category is, we said it's kind of everyone, it's arguably bigger. The former category, you think of some of the biggest wins in VC over the years, maybe you pick Uber or Airbnb, they couldn't have existed before there was the iPhone or whatever. So do you think about that you want native versus assisted, or does it just depend?
The one place I just, I think even in the assisted, where like it's going after an existing established category, I think the solution can be completely different, right? So for example, contact center, that entire industry is huge, right? BPOs, contact centers, etc. And there's a lot of opportunity in making one of those contact centers more effective. But with Gen AI, you can now try to automate a contact center, like the voice call itself. You can be just having a call with a digital host end to end. And you'll start with a narrower class of problems, right? Like, hey, call FedEx and where's my package, or making a hotel reservation. So not the very deep, like, hey, Cisco's, router number, this problem, and I'm not able to solve it. So you start with an easier class of problems, but you can just, in an existing market, like, yes, there's customer support. How can you completely transform it? And that's one of the investments we've made in a company called PolyAI. So even just rethinking in established industries becomes very useful. And yeah, we think there's opportunity everywhere. So we don't limit ourselves to one or the other. We just like to understand, what is the wedge going in, and how do they think this would play out, and what advantages, because, generative AI does not give a distribution advantage, which the incumbents have today. And so there has to be some way to parlay the advantage of a faster moving agile startup into a business win. And that's not easy. So understanding how a team thinks about that becomes very important for us. Tim, you're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry. Just a couple minutes left. I want to make sure to give everybody a chance to answer an important question. That part of this Launchable week is almost all the builders on the call are working towards a project. They're going to give a 5-minute pitch at the end of the week. Any advice for this audience of founders, ways to stand out, points to get across, things that they want to make sure that they should land, if they're going to give a short pitch of how they're using Gen AI to start a new business?
I would say, be authentic on where you're actually using AI and where you're not. I mean, everything's been washed with AI, and like every presentation, every pitch we hear right now has some version of that. And sometimes it's disheartening when you peel the onion and it's actually not real AI, or it's maybe just marketing BS, which is okay. But I think just be authentic about where you're actually using it, and where there's a need for it, versus where you're sort of kind of shoehorning it in where it's not really it's overkill.
I think one thing that's helpful for like the earliest stages is really just getting the eyeballs, so that you can get the feedback and thoughts and ideas from as many people as possible. I think one thing, one kind of small tip on the demo side is, I've seen a lot of demos, some go viral, some not. Picking the right demo, right? Even with the same tool, there's probably 12 different demos you could do, but finding one that will resonate with the audience you're targeting, I think, is something that a lot of founders don't think through enough. And I often see demos where I think, if you had done this demo, this probably would have gone further. So that's a small tip.
A couple of things I would say is, one, oftentimes founders talk about the industry size, and not the market they're going after. So being very clear about, if they are successful in building what they are, what an impact can they have? That becomes important. Founders sometimes misjudge that. The other is, really show us like the bias to execution. You're not just armchair like thinking and philosophizing about like what can happen. Like, what have you built? Just show us, right? And then finally, and then that this is not a Gen AI startup, but any startup, like, how are they thinking about the risk retirement order? Which risks have already been retired? What are they focused on for the next couple of years? And in the future, what do we need to believe? And I feel like if we are aligned on the big vision and the risk retirement order, and generally agree that the team has a bias to execution or bias to action, like we tend to be more lean forward than not.
Terrific. Hey, thank you all so much. I think we're right at 4:45 and another panel starting. I'm getting a few thumbs up. Thank you very, very much for all the insights, and thanks to the audience for the good questions. I hopefully you hit most of them, and this was useful to everyone. And thank you to MBL for giving us an opportunity to shoot the breeze here and hopefully help out for a few minutes on an afternoon.
Thanks,
Thank you
Tim.
for having
Thanks for
us.
having us. Rama, it was nice to meet you.
Thank you
You
so
too,
much.
Yohei. Bye, Kanu.